a respiratory problem. The 74-year-old was hospitalized Thursday for what was to be a brief stay. Reports say his family had been gathering by his side, including his daughter Layla, who's also a former professional boxer herself. Ali had a total of 9 children and has been battling advanced Parkinson's disease for years. He was also hospitalized in December of 2014 and January 2015. Ali was first diagnosed with Parkinson's in 1984. He is considered one of the greatest heavyweights in the history of boxing, winning his first World Heavyweight Championship in 1964 at 22 years old. Ali is said to be one of the most recognized sports figures in history. Sports Illustrated even naming him Sportsman of the Century. Brian Kilmeade has a look at his rise to fame, his career, and his legacy.
In February 1964, he entered the ring against the reigning world title holder, Sonny Liston. He emerged the heavyweight champion of the world. Muhammad Ali was born Cassius Clay in Louisville, Kentucky. January 17, 1942. Clay started boxing at the age of 12. After winning a gold medal in the 1960 Olympics, he turned pro. But it was after the Liston fight that Clay announced his affiliation with the Nation of Islam and changed his name to Muhammad Ali.
It's hard to be humble in this pretty time.
The 3-time heavyweight champion was one of the most popular men in sports history. In 1967, he was drafted into the U.S. Army, but refused to fight in Vietnam, stating religious differences. He was immediately stripped of his title and licensed to box. Ali's license would be reinstated in 1970, and he vowed to return to the top of the ranks, and he would. October 1974, he got his chance against a powerful young heavyweight by the name of George Foreman. The fight was billed as the Rumble in the Jungle. Ali went into the bout a 3-1 underdog, but that wasn't enough to silence the greatest.
Only last week, I murdered a rock, injured a stone, hospitalized a brick. I'm so mean I make medicine sick.
Ali spent the first half of the fight with his back to the ropes and allowed his mighty opponent to punch himself out. Ali would drop Foreman in the 8th round. He would once again be the heavyweight champion of the world. Both Ali and Foreman took home a $5 million purse, which many feel paved the way for today's multi-million-dollar contracts in any sport.
Before Ali, purses were very minimal. During Ali's time, they grew. After Ali, they just exploded.
Ali lost the title again 4 years later to another young Olympic gold medalist, Leon Spinks. He'd win a 12-round split decision in February over the living legend, only to relinquish the title back to Ali 7 months later. This made Ali the only boxer in history to win the heavyweight title 3 times. The roaring crowds are what fueled him for 15 years and 61 fights, but his drive to please them kept Ali from heeding doctors' warnings. He was slowing down. His thyroid was blamed. Medication was a daily routine. It wasn't until losing his last fight in 1981 that Ali admitted Parkinson's syndrome was the real enemy, forcing him to take off the gloves for good. But leaving the ring didn't keep Ali out of the public eye. Neither did the disease. Despite Parkinson's syndrome, Ali's work with the community would never stop. His work around the globe was lauded. Then, 1996, another high. Muhammad Ali was chosen to light the Olympic flame in Atlanta. In 2002, Ali went to Afghanistan as a UN messenger of peace. He was in Kabul for a 3-day goodwill mission. 3 years later, Ali would accept the nation's highest civilian award.
When you say the greatest of all time is in the room, everyone knows who you mean.
President George W. Bush presented Ali with the Presidential Medal of Freedom during ceremonies at the White House. Even as he neared 70 years of age, Ali remained dedicated to humanitarian efforts. As one of the most prominent U.S. Muslims, he appealed to Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, to show mercy and release 2 American hikers held on spy charges. Despite his deteriorating health, Ali made a rare public appearance to show his respect at his greatest rival's funeral, Joe Frazier. He could float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. When we think of the greatest, we'll always think Muhammad Ali. Brian Kilmeade, Fox News.
Ali has rarely been seen in public since last September when he attended an award ceremony hosted by the university in Louisville honoring his boxing career and his legacy as a hometown hero. The Muhammad Ali Childhood Home Museum opened earlier this month in Louisville, which is also home to the Muhammad Ali Center, a museum and cultural center honoring the champion. Ali was also a best-selling author who wrote several books, including one called The Greatest, My Own Story, and another titled The Soul of the Butterfly. You know, when I think about Muhammad Ali, I think of the story of him as a child from Louisville, Kentucky. As the story goes, he was 12 years old when his bike was stolen, and he was pretty angry. And the story goes that a police officer came upon him who happened to also be a boxing coach. And that officer, he told the officer that he was going to give that thief a whoop. And the officer said, well, you better learn to box, and he did. He didn't just learn to box, he won that Olympic gold medal. He's one of the greatest boxing legends of all time, someone we will be all thinking about tonight. And joining us now is Juan Williams. He's done a number of interviews with Muhammad Ali. Juan, thank you for being here with us. What are your thoughts?
My pleasure. It's a sad night, but it's a pleasure to talk about a guy that I regard as the hero for so many during the 20th century. I think he may be the best known person in the world. Even now, I don't know anybody who you could run into a village in China, you could run into a village in India, Latin America, in any tribe, and just ask about that name, Muhammad Ali, and everyone would nod. He was the heavyweight champion of the world when it meant everything to be the heavyweight champion. That was the greatest athlete on earth.
What was it like interviewing this man, being in his presence?
Well, for me, it was, normally as a journalist, you come into these interviews and you have a sense of critical distance from the person you're interviewing because as journalists, we're always somewhat adversarial. But with Ali, first of all, he was so playful and so funny. And I don't know if you know this, but he was a magician. So he would sometimes just entertain me with magic tricks. And at some point, all of the distance and the mask and the toughness of the journalist, he would just be like, what an entertaining, wonderful man he is. Just a wonderful guy. I mean, I think that's part of the charm of Muhammad Ali. He was childlike in so many ways that you forget how controversial he was. I mean, controversial for not enlisting in the military in the way that Joe Louis had done. Joe Louis, of course, another great heavyweight champion, but one who had served his country. And Ali made a point of being a conscientious objector, his case going all the way to the Supreme Court, which ruled in his favor. But 3 years in the prime of his athletic career gone as a result. And in some quarters, people never forgave him. New York sports writers, people like Dick Young, always felt that Ali had not lived up to the standard of a Joe Louis and other great black boxers of the earlier era. I mean, even if you think about people like Jesse Owens, proud, patriotic people, here was Ali who was challenging that, who famously challenged the Vietnam War.
Yeah, he stood up for his beliefs, and that actually went to the Supreme Court, and he won. He actually had been convicted, and then he won in the Supreme Court. That conviction was overturned. He ended up not spending time in jail because of it. But you talk about his personality. I remember one of the things that he talked about was he said that people who are humble don't go that far in life, but that he's actually a pretty nice guy at home. And it sounds like that's the experience that you had when meeting with him.
It always was. And I remember going to an ESPN award ceremony with him. I had done ESPN did the greatest athletes of the 20th century. Obviously, Ali was the preeminent figure in so many minds. And I remember going with him to take an award and walking in among all these celebrities. And I don't know if you know the name R. Kelly, but he sang a song basically dedicated to Ali. I Believe I Can Fly. And I remember R. Kelly coming up to him, and it was like a child coming up to an adult or to his hero. And of course, R. Kelly's a well-known entertainer, but there were so many people, there are other athletes, famous athletes, who simply wanted to touch him, simply wanted his acknowledgement. And at that point, it became clear to me that it wasn't just that Ali was special to me, a little boy, I was a little boy when he was in his prime, listening on the radio to his bouts, but that he was someone to the world of athletics in the United States and beyond. I don't know if you know this, but when he won the heavyweight championship, he was just 22 years old when he beat Sonny Liston. But even then, in his corner, he had people like the famous singer Sam Cooke. He had Sugar Ray Robinson, another great boxer, and Malcolm X, the famous militant black Muslim. All of these people were attracted to Muhammad Ali even before he was the heavyweight champion of the world.
An incredibly transformative figure in our lifetime. We were just showing the Wheaties box. I'll never forget when they unveiled the Wheaties box with him on it. Just speaking to how widespread he was, how well he was known around the world and in our country. People were so proud of him. Can you talk a little bit, Juan, about that interview that you did and some of the things that really stood out that you remember from what he said?
Well, I remember talking to him a little bit about being older, putting on weight. He's at that point, this was, in early 2001, late 2001, December of 2001, and talking to him in Los Angeles as we were preparing to go to the ESPN award, and just talking to him about putting on weight, getting older, and he said to me, being heavyweight champion of the world, being known around the globe, really was for him an opening act. And I thought, an opening act? For what? And he talked about being an ambassador to the world, not only for the United States, but for the idea of people coming to know people, people loving people. He was such an ambassador, just a global ambassador to the world. And he talked about just wanting for all these years to be somebody who could be a healing force. And, this is a tremendous personal journey he took. Ali starts out without education. He was not an educated person. And he comes from segregated Louisville, as you've talked about earlier, and falls in with the black Muslims. And at first is all about racial separation and segregation. But he grew into the person that went beyond that and came to understand, in his own language here, I'm not speaking as Juan Williams, but in his own language, that he really felt so strongly that God's will was to have him stand tall to be a champion so that all people could understand their common humanity. And to me, it was, wow, look at what has become of Muhammad Ali. And by then, he was about 60 years old. And again, so intent on looking beyond his boxing skills, his tremendous achievements in the ring, and talking about what he could do as a humanitarian.
And he did so much as a humanitarian, Juan. Can you talk a little bit about his experience doing work around the world and sharing his goodwill?
Wow. I don't think there's a country in the world where he wasn't regaled, honored. People were thrilled to see him, to talk to him. When he went to the Olympics, to me, I get emotional just thinking about it. I don't know if you remember this, but in Atlanta, at the Olympics, he was selected by the United States to be the person to carry the torch, to light the Olympic flame in Atlanta. And he had Parkinson's by that time, so his arm was shaking as he mounted those steps. I remember just crying. I just couldn't believe it. The man who had been the outcast, who had been condemned for refusing to enlist, the man who had been such a racially polarizing figure in the United States at a time of the Civil Rights Movement, now he was being honored that the American people, American government had selected him as the athlete, the representative of our great country at that moment. And he was a representative to the world. As I say, I don't think there was anyone in any corner of the world who had to think for a second about who is that carrying the Olympic torch for the United States of America. It was Muhammad Ali.
That is so true, Juan. And I remember that he received an honorary medal because he had lost the medal that he received in his Olympics when he won. Juan, I'm going to want to come back to you to talk more about your experience in meeting with this incredible figure that we knew and that was so special here in our country and to the world. But right now I have joining us Danielle Miller. She's a reporter with KSAZ TV in Arizona. She is at the hospital where Ali died. Danielle, what can you tell us?
Yeah, we actually have been out here for most of the day, and he's here at the Scottsdale Osborne Hospital where he was brought, we're told, on Thursday for a respiratory problem, and he was later confirmed, obviously, that he did pass away here at the hospital tonight. And he is being remembered tonight here in the Phoenix Valley. As many of you know, he's lived here for several years. He's done so much for Parkinson's research. He's had a celebrity fight night here in the Valley for about 22 years. He's raised about $118 million for that Parkinson's research here in the Valley. So definitely a lot of memories for a lot of people here in the Valley, in the Phoenix Valley, that is. And the family here did release a statement from the hospital telling us that they're thanking the entire community out here for their support, their prayers, and that they're actually asking for privacy at this time. Now, we are told that they're going to be discussing at a resort in Scottsdale tomorrow some funeral arrangements, funeral plans. Back to you.
Danielle, what is the sense there? What's the feeling? Are you starting to see crowds gather? And what is the sense as we mourn the loss of this incredible human being?
There's a lot of people out here. Originally, there was just a few camera crews, but we're seeing a lot of people start to just come to the area, kind of talk to us to see what's going on and things like that. It was reported earlier that he was here, but we didn't have it confirmed, so not a lot of people out here earlier this afternoon. But as the hour continues to go on, we definitely saw a lot of people coming to the area. Obviously, the national media is down, their local media, so a lot of people, and I'm expecting a lot more people to be coming in to come down.
And this is, of course, the area where he's been living for the past few years. How is the community responding?
We actually talked to a guy who's the founder of Celebrity Fight Night today, earlier this afternoon, and he was just obviously devastated that he was in the hospital. This was before Muhammad Ali was officially confirmed that he did pass away. He's definitely just a big thing here in our community. He goes to every single Celebrity Fight Night, even when he's been ill or fragile, and he makes the moment. He makes people want to be there. There's, as many of us have seen, A-list celebrities go to the same event every single year, and like I mentioned, for 22 years now, they tell us that he only missed one of those, and he was actually just at the Celebrity Fight Night, which was here, held in the Valley, on April 9th. We're told that he did look fragile, and he was frail at the time, but in good spirits, and there to raise money for the charity that he loved the most.
And as you spend time with people in the community, what do you expect to happen in the coming hours? Are you hearing anything about a memorial service or any sort of pop-up memorial starting to form yet, or is it just too soon at this point, Danielle?
It's just too soon out here. We're seeing a couple of people from the community kind of come out here and ask us a few questions. Nothing, no memorials or anything set up, but as you guys can imagine, locally he was a huge deal, nationally, world, everything. So I'm sure there's going to be plenty of support out here. We were told that tomorrow at a Scottsdale resort they're going to be discussing funeral arrangements, so I'm sure wherever they plan to hold that, or if it's going to be here in the Valley or somewhere else, I'm sure those memorials will be popping up pretty soon.
And have you heard, you mentioned that the family is asking for privacy right now, but have we heard anything recently from the family about him? Do you get a sense that we'll be hearing from the family soon?
In the letter that they released from the statement here from the hospital, they said they want their privacy at this time, so not sure if they're going to be speaking out to us, or today we've been talking mostly with a family representative, so nobody from the actual Ali family, so not sure at this time if anybody will reach out to us, or if it's just too soon to tell.
All right, well, Danielle, we will be watching. Thank you so much for your reporting, and please keep us updated on anything you learn. We'll all be wanting to hear what the family has to say. Well, if you'll stay with us here on the Fox News channel for continuing coverage of the death of Mohammad Ali. Right now, we have Kaiwis.
He was taken to hospital in Phoenix, Arizona on Thursday. We heard it was a respiratory issue, and there's been different information about his health over the last 2 days. Originally, a spokesman said that he was in a fine condition, but his